Hello there, and welcome to Dream Myths. Welcome back, my weary dreamers. Tonight, we wander into the veiled mists of Scotland, a land where every stone, every whisper of the wind, seems to hold a secret older than memory itself. Here, mountains rise like silent sentinels, cloaked in heather and cloud. Rivers carve their restless paths through glens, and the sea roars against jagged shores as though speaking in a language long forgotten. In such a place, stories are not merely told, they are breathed into the very air. Around peat fires that crackle in the dark, generations have gathered, weaving legends into the fabric of everyday life. These tales are not idle fancies, but living traditions, carrying warnings, lessons, and wonder. Some speak of the wee folk, small and elusive spirits who move between shadows, sometimes blessing, sometimes cursing. Others whisper of creatures lurking in the lochs, forms half seen in moonlight, whose names are uttered only in hushed voices. Scottish mythology is unlike the grand pantheons of Greece or Rome. It does not parade gods in golden temples or heroes crowned with laurels. Instead, it entwines the ordinary with the extraordinary, blending history with superstition, nature with the supernatural. It is a mythology of hearth and hill, born of fear, of awe, and of the human need to make sense of a world that often seemed merciless. Picture this: the moon slipping like silver across the peak of Ben Nevis, the highest mountain in the land. The night wind rises, and in it, faint echoes ride the air notes of music, perhaps, or words not meant for human ears. Is it only the sigh of the earth as it settles? Or is it something otherworldly, calling to those who dare to listen? Here, in this twilight threshold, the boundary between what is real and what is imagined thins, and myth takes its first breath. According to legend, the Scots trace their lineage not to the rugged Highlands themselves, but to far older roots born beneath the blazing sun of Egypt. It is said that an exiled noble took to wife a princess named Skoda, daughter of a pharaoh, whose empire trembled in the shadow of the Israelites' flight. When the pharaoh's army was drowned in pursuit, Egypt was left vulnerable, and Skoda's husband gathered his people and fled. Thus began an odyssey, lasting 42 long years, a wandering across continents that would shape the destiny of a nation. Their path carried them first into Spain, where they dwelt for a time before war and hunger drove them further still. From there, they crossed into Ireland and finally, over restless seas, to a wild and unfamiliar land, a realm of mists, dark lochs, and mountains that seemed to pierce the heavens. Here, in the place that would bear Skoda's name, they crowned their own kings and for centuries remained untamed by any foreign hand. The land itself conspired to forge their spirit. The soil was thin and stony, the winters long and merciless, the seas treacherous and unpredictable. Yet within these harsh landscapes, myth found fertile ground. Every storm over the Atlantic seemed to echo the trials of their ancestors. Every glen and crag became a stage upon which stories could be told of bravery, of loss, of the eternal struggle to endure. Another tale, spoken in hushed tones along the coast, insists that not all of Skoda's warriors reached safety. Some, it is said, fell in battle or were swallowed by the waves. Their bodies were never buried, but their spirits lingered. The stones that line the shores, rough and silent, are believed to be their petrified forms, sentinels, forever gazing seaward, awaiting the day their queen will return to lead them home. When dusk settled across the glens and the veil between worlds grew thin, the people of Scotland spoke often of the fair folk beings neither wholly benevolent nor wholly wicked, but unpredictable as the wind itself. These spirits were believed to move unseen through forests, over moors, and into the hearths of cottages, bringing either fortune or despair. To some, they were tricksters, weaving mischief into the fabric of daily life. To others, they were arbiters of fate, bestowing sudden blessings upon a farmer's field or guiding a weary traveler to safety. Yet, just as often, they were blamed for sickness, unexplained accidents, or storms that ruined a harvest. Among the most unsettling of their tales was the legend of the changeling. Villagers whispered that fairies, coveting the vitality of human children, would steal them away in the night, leaving behind a frail substitute in the cradle. This changeling, though resembling the child, was marked by peculiar traits. It might feed with insatiable hunger, yet never grow, or it might cry endlessly with a voice that seemed too old for its tiny body. Some claimed its eyes gleamed with a strange, unnatural light, betraying the glamour that cloaked its true form. Communities developed ways to protect themselves from such thefts. Branches of rowan were hung above doors and windows. Iron tools were kept close to the crib, and prayers were murmured at the first sign of misfortune. If a family suspected a changeling had entered their home, wise women knew rituals to expose it, placing eggshells filled with water near the fire, or speaking charms that forced the creature to reveal its age in words far beyond its supposed years. Even in later centuries, when reason and science began to spread, the old fears lingered. In remote villages, elders still warned that certain sounds at night foretold danger. The tapping of invisible fingers upon the roof, or the laughter of a child echoing from an empty room. To them, these were not tricks of the imagination, but signs that the fair folk were watching, waiting for the moment to strike. There was once a blacksmith named Alistair McKitchen, a man of great strength and quiet resolve, who lived in a modest cottage on the windswept Isle of Islay. His wife had died in childbirth, and so his only companion was his son, Neil, a boy slender of frame, with restless eyes that seemed to dream beyond the forge's fire. Though small, Neil brought light to his father's days, and together they worked, tended their animals, and lived in a rhythm of simple happiness. Yet whispers had long warned of the fair folk who haunted the hills nearby, creatures who coveted children like Neil, delicate and thoughtful, perfect prizes for their shadowed realm. Each night, Alistair hung a branch of rowan above the door, for rowan was thought to repel enchantment. But one fateful evening, when the blacksmith was forced to journey far and the protective charm was forgotten, the danger he had long feared arrived. When Alistair returned, he found not the son he knew, but a pale figure lying in Neil's bed. Its skin was brittle as parchment, its appetite unending, and its voice quivered with an age no child should possess. A wise man confirmed the terrible truth. Neil had been stolen away, replaced by a changeling. To reclaim him, Alistair would need both courage and cunning. The blacksmith did not falter. He exposed the false child by tricking it into speech, then cast it into the fire as legend demanded. The changeling shrieked, dissolved into smoke, and fled through the roof. With his faith and his iron will, Alistair pressed onward, armed with a Bible, a sword, and the crow of a rooster. He entered the hill of the fair folk under the light of the full moon. There he found Neil, enslaved at a glowing forge, hammering strange metals for his captors. With holy words and iron strength, Alistair broke the enchantment and carried his son home. Yet the fair folk did not yield without malice. As father and child crossed the threshold of the mortal world, a curse was hurled upon Neil. His tongue would know no speech until the day he shattered the spell with his own hand. For a year and a day, the boy was silent, though his eyes still glimmered with hidden fire. The curse was lifted in an unexpected moment. Tasked with forging a new claymore for his clan chief, Neil remembered the secret craft of the fairies, their hidden methods of tempering blades. His hands worked with a ferocity beyond mortal measure, and when at last he quenched the blade, it gleamed like moonlight caught in steel. Holding it high, he whispered his first words since that night. Here is a sword that will never fail its master. From that day forward, Neil spoke again, his voice restored. Some say the sword remained in his clan for generations, its edge never dulled, its radiance flaring whenever dark forces drew near. In the telling of such tales, it is said that the glow of that blade has not faded, a lingering defiance against the shadows, and a reminder that even in the grip of otherworldly power, love and courage may yet prevail. Far to the north, where the rugged Highlands surrender to the restless sea, lies a strait, both feared and revered the Minch. Treacherous waters churn there without warning, as though some hidden hand stirs the depths. Sailors of old knew well the guardians said to dwell beneath its waves. The blue men of the Minch, their origin, whispered in fireside lore, marks them as no mere spirits of the sea, but descendants of angels cast from heaven in the great rebellion, when they plunged from the skies into the waters below. Their brilliance was drowned, their bodies stained the deep indigo of storm and tide. Condemned for eternity, they roamed the strait, as judges of men who dared its passage. To those who sailed humbly, giving the sea its due reverence, the blue men were watchers, silent as shadows. But for the arrogant, those who mocked the ocean's power or defied its rhythm, they became executioners. Legends tell that they rose from the foam, their eyes glowing like distant lanterns, and challenged captains with riddles. A single wrong answer could summon tempests fierce enough to scatter a fleet and drag ships to the abyss. The contest was not merely of wit, but of worth. To outthink a blue man was to prove oneself in harmony with the sea. Some mariners swore that music held the only power to soften their judgment. A lone voice raised in an ancient ballad, a song that carried the memory of kin and homeland, was said to move the spectral figures. The melody would weave with the wind, and as the last note faded, the storm would still. The waters calmed as though no fury had ever brewed, leaving the crew trembling in awe at what mercy had been granted. Thus, the Minch was never just a crossing of water, but a trial of spirit. Every voyage bore the weight of unseen eyes, and every wave might conceal a question that determines survival. The blue men endure in story as both warning and wonder, guardians of a passage where pride meets peril, and only those who sail with respect may hope to return. In the shadowed glens of Scotland, where superstition clung as tightly as mist to the heather, the word witch carried both dread and desire. To some, these were women who trafficked with spirits, weaving curses and misfortune into the lives of those who crossed them. To others, they were healers and seers, capable of bending unseen forces for protection, fertility, or prosperity. Fear and need walked hand in hand, for in an age when sickness and famine struck without warning, even the godly sometimes turned to the forbidden for hope. The lore of witches was not confined to whispers and darkened cottages. It bled into the very rhythm of village life. At ancient markets, traders spoke of coin charms, ordinary pieces of silver or copper etched with strange symbols, sold as talismans against ruin. To hold such a token was to believe that fate itself could be altered in an instant. For those desperate enough, a single charm might be the difference between a failed harvest and a full storehouse. between sickness and survival. Yet, just as charms promised safety, omens marked danger. The sudden flight of a raven across a rooftop in the dead of night was no random occurrence in the eyes of the people. It was a sign, they said, that a witch's gaze had fallen upon the household. Families would respond with frantic measures, iron nailed above doors, salt scattered on thresholds, or prayers whispered until dawn, and still the fear remained, gnawing quietly, for who could know if such defenses held any power at all? In the reign of King James, the dread of witchcraft reached its fevered height. Trials multiplied, confessions were wrung from trembling lips, and the line between superstition and paranoia dissolved. But beneath the cruelty of accusation, the older truth endured, that in Scotland's hills and villages, the figure of the witch was never just a villain. She was a mirror of human longing, a vessel for both terror and wonder, embodying the unshakable belief that unseen forces ruled the fragile balance of mortal life. On the windswept Isle of Uist, there lived a farming family whose life followed the steady rhythm of the seasons. Each autumn, when the harvest was safely stored away, they would sail across the sea to visit friends on the Isle of Lewis. It was a tradition as old as memory, a brief joy before the long silence of winter. But on one such journey, the husband's fate was ensnared by a presence that none could ignore. In the house where they lodged appeared a tall woman with hair black as raven's wing and eyes deep as midnight waters. She spoke little, yet her silence carried weight, and soon the farmer found himself restless in her absence and consumed by her image when she was near. Though he had a wife and children, he grew hollow with longing, as though bewitched by something not entirely human. Sensing danger, his wife urged their departure. But each time they made for the sea, storms rose out of nowhere, driving them back. The waves lashed like whips, and the mist swallowed their path. Desperation brought them to an old woman who dwelt at the edge of the moor, her hair white as thistledown and her eyes sharp with knowing. She offered them a rope knotted 3 times. "Untie one knot for a fair breeze," she said. "Untie the second for a strong wind. But by all that is holy, leave the third untouched. The next morning, the sea lay calm as glass. The first knot was loosened, and a gentle wind carried them forward. The second knot was drawn, and the sails strained as the boat flew across the waves. The man felt the grip of enchantment lift, his thoughts clearing like sky after rain. Yet pride and curiosity gnawed at him. What power, he wondered, hid within the final knot? Against the pleas of his crew, he gave the order. The moment the cord was loosed, the sea erupted. From the depths rose a colossal shape, neither holy woman nor holy storm, its face marked by those same cold, dark eyes. A single hand reached down, seized the man, and swept him into the abyss. The boat was hurled back onto the shores of Uist, stranded forever, where its wreck became stone. To this day, the place is called Port of the Island of the Boat. Locals say the howling winds that tear across that coast still carry his voice, the sorrowful cry of the curious, a warning that there are secrets not meant to be tested, and bargains that must never be broken. In the district of Badenoch, where the hills roll into dark forests and the river Spey winds its silver course, there lived long ago a woman known as the wife of Lagan. To her neighbors, she was no ordinary crofter's wife, but a figure of fear, whispered about in both daylight and dusk. Misfortune seemed to follow her enemies. Cattle fell sick, milk soured in the churn, and children wasted away without cause. Many swore she held the power of witchcraft, bending unseen forces to her will. The village endured her malice until at last a man named Donald Bain took a nearby croft. Unlike others, Donald was reputed to practice the white craft, a form of folk magic rooted in protection rather than harm. He hung rowan branches above his doors, hammered iron into his thresholds, and blessed his animals with charms whispered over their water. Under his watch, the wife's spells faltered, and the balance of power began to shift. The struggle came to its height one autumn when a great black cat was seen prowling the byres at night. Suspecting it to be no common beast, Donald cast a silver bullet, for silver was said to pierce enchantment itself. When the shot rang out, the cat screamed with a voice too human to mistake. Days later, the wife of Lagan was seen limping, her eyes burning with fury but her strength broken. Still, she did not relent. One night she crept into Donald's shieling, shifting her form into that of a black hen, her feathers glistening with an unnatural sheen. But Donald's dogs, loyal and fierce, sprang upon her. The struggle was fierce and filled the night with cries, until at last the witch staggered into the open, bloodied and beaten. By morning, word spread that she lay dying, undone by the very beastly forms she had worn. The villagers gathered, carrying her body to the crest of a hill. There, upon a pyre, they consigned her to the flames, watching the fire consume what they believed to be her corrupted soul. From that day onward, no tree has ever grown upon that barren rise, as though the earth itself refused to heal. Yet the story did not end with her ashes. It is said that on nights of the blood moon, a shadow still circles that lonely mound, a great black cat, its eyes glowing red as burning coals, paces the earth restlessly, as if the witch's spirit still prowls in search of vengeance. Few dare to look upon it. For those who do claim to feel a chill settle into their bones, a reminder that some fires never truly go out. Across the highlands and islands, the land itself seems alive with whispers of beings, neither wholly real nor wholly imagined. The lochs, dark and fathomless, are said to shelter monstrous shapes that glide beneath their surface, revealing themselves only in fleeting ripples or sudden shadows. To wander alone at night along the moors is to invite an encounter with presences, unseen restless spirits, mournful banshees whose cries foretell death, or selkies, the seal folk who slip between skin and human form with a grace both beautiful and tragic. The kelpie, the dreaded water horse, haunts rivers and fords, appearing first as a sleek steed or a handsome stranger. It lures the unwary onto its back, only to plunge with them into the current, never to return. Mermaids, too, linger on rocky shores, combing their long hair, their voices soft as tides. Some tales call them lovers who long for human souls. Others brand them deceivers who drag sailors to watery graves. But there are darker whispers still, spoken rarely and never without unease. Some claim that in desolate glens prowl the shadow hounds black, spectral beasts that stalk those who have strayed too far from the safety of firelight. Their bodies are said to be made of smoke, their forms half seen, yet the echo of their claws striking stone rings clear in the silence of night. Those who hear the sound and fail to reach shelter are seldom seen again, and deep within the forests, where sunlight struggles to pierce the canopy, travelers have told of hearing harp strings plucked upon the wind. No hand was seen upon the instrument, no minstrel waiting by the path. The music was said to belong to the wandering souls of bards, long dead, condemned to seek audiences that would never gather. Their melodies drift between the trees, haunting, sorrowful, and strangely sweet, until they fade as suddenly as they arose, leaving only the memory of a song unfinished. Such tales blur the line between imagination and experience. Whether spirit, beast, or trick of the mind, they speak to a deeper truth, that in Scotland, the landscape itself is a stage for the uncanny, where every stone, every gust of wind might be a messenger from realms unseen. The waters of Loch Ness stretch long and narrow through the great glen, a ribbon of darkness framed by steep green slopes. To the eye, it appears still, yet beneath its surface lies one of the most enduring mysteries of Scotland, the legend of the Loch Ness Monster. The earliest written account comes from the life of Saint Columba in the 6th century. It is said that while traveling near the River Ness, the saint witnessed a great beast rise from the water and threaten one of his followers. With nothing but the sign of the cross and words of command, Columba drove it back, and so the tale entered history. To his contemporaries, this was not mere folklore, but evidence of the saint's divine authority over forces unknown. Centuries passed, and the story lingered as a whisper along the Highlands. Fishermen spoke of sudden ripples on windless nights, of shapes too vast to belong to any known creature. Some monks recorded that on rare evenings, the loch itself seemed to shift in color, as though the depths were stirred by the slow, rhythmic pulse of something immense, like the heartbeat of a leviathan slumbering far below. In modern times, the legend surged once more. In the 1932 Travelers reported seeing a creature like a whale breaking the surface, and newspapers seized upon the tale. Photographs followed grainy images of humps and serpentine necks that ignited fascination across the world. Scientists deployed sonar, divers braved the depths, expeditions scanned the waters with cameras and radar. Yet, for every vague shadow captured, certainty slipped further from reach. What Nessie truly is myth, hoax, misidentified creature, or relic of a forgotten age remains unanswered. But in truth, the power of the Loch Ness Monster lies not in proof, but in possibility. It is a symbol of wonder, a reminder that even in an age of reason and technology, the unknown still stirs just beyond sight. And when the mists rise from the loch at dawn, curling across the water like breath from an unseen giant, who among us can say with certainty that nothing waits below? In the folklore of Scotland, few creatures inspire more dread than the kelpie, the water horse said to haunt rivers, fords, and lonely lochs. At first glance, it appears magnificent, a steed of impossible beauty, with a mane that glistens like wet silk, standing temptingly at the water's edge. To the weary traveler, it promises strength and swiftness. To children, it offers the thrill of a free ride. Yet the moment one lays a hand upon its hide, the spell is sealed. The victim finds themselves unable to let go, as if their flesh is fused to the creature's skin. With a sudden bound, the kelpie plunges into the depths, dragging its rider beneath the dark current to drown. Not all kelpies wear the shape of a horse. Some tales speak of them as handsome men or fair women, appearing at twilight with hair damp from the river, their eyes glinting like polished stone. They charm the unsuspecting with gentle words and a promise of companionship, only to reveal their true form when it is too late. In every guise, the kelpie embodies seduction entwined with death, the irresistible lure that leads to ruin. Yet, folklore also grants the possibility of mastery. In certain villages, it was believed that a kelpie could be subdued if bound with a bridle or chain made of pure silver. Forced into submission, it would shed its watery glamour and appear as a human captive. Some claimed that under such compulsion, the kelpie would speak secrets of hidden hoards buried deep in riverbeds, treasures guarded for centuries in the shifting silt. But to hold such a creature was perilous. For the moment the silver restraint was loosened, the kelpie would vanish back into the water, and woe to the mortal who lingered too near. The stories endure because they speak to a truth older than the legends themselves. The eternal danger of beauty that conceals destruction, and the price of reaching too greedily for power over forces that cannot be tamed. By the banks of certain rivers, villagers still swear that when moonlight strikes the water just so, a sleek, dark shape can be seen, waiting patiently for the next soul to stray too close. Along the lonely stretch of Sandwood Bay, where dunes meet a sea as wild as any in Scotland, the legends of mermaids linger like salt in the air. These are not the glittering maidens of children's tales, but beings woven from longing and sorrow, half human and half sea-like, who move between two worlds, yet belong to neither. Fishermen swore they saw them at dawn, combing their long hair with shells, their eyes fixed on horizons no mortal could read. One tale tells of a mermaid who fell in love with a holy man on the Isle of Iona. Drawn by his devotion, she rose each morning from the tide to watch him pray, her heart torn between the call of the sea and the pull of his faith. Yet she was bound by her nature, unable to walk the earth for long. Each time she lingered, the waves reclaimed her, and she wept bitterly as she was dragged back into the depths. It is said her tears hardened into smooth white stones that still scatter Iona's beaches, silent relics of a love that could never be fulfilled. But not all encounters with mermaids end in sorrow alone. Some sailors claim to have heard their voices mingling with the wind, melodies that twined with the crash of waves until the very sea seemed to sing. The songs were sweet and terrible at once, filled with promises of rest and reunion. Entire crews, lulled by the music, are said to have set down their oars and drifted helplessly into the mist, never to return. To hear such a song was to feel one's soul unravel, tethered no longer to the world of men, but drawn into the endless embrace of the ocean. The mermaid embodies both danger and desire, a vision of beauty that carries the weight of tragedy. She is at once a reminder of the sea's generosity and a warning of its claim over all who live by its edge. Even now, When storms sweep across Sandwood Bay and the surf breaks against the rocks, locals say a voice rides on the gale, carrying a melody not born of this world, a lament for all who listen and for all who are lost. As the fire burns low and the last embers sink into ash, the voices of these tales do not fall silent. Legends in Scotland are not relics buried in the past, but living echoes that move with the land itself. They breathe in the mist that rolls across the lochs. They stir in the shadows of the glens. They linger in the rhythm of waves that pound the northern shores. Myth here is not a simple escape from reason, but a companion to it, an unseen thread weaving wonder into the fabric of daily life. Even in an age of science and steel, the old stories endure because they answer something the mind alone cannot quiet. They remind us that the world is deeper than our measurements, older than our records, and far stranger than we dare admit. The fair folk, the kelpies, the mermaids, and the nameless beasts of the Highlands may be shadows, but shadows are cast only when something stands in the light. So when night falls over the heathered hills, and the wind whistles through the narrow passes of stone, listen closely. What you hear may not be the wind at all, but the murmur of countless stories still waiting to be told, whispers of a realm just beyond sight, calling softly to those willing to believe.